All right, welcome. Thank you all very much for coming. This is really quite a wonderful event, and it's really a joyous event. So especially would like to thank members of Fred's family, who there should have been more, but sickness hits. So at least Adrian is here and his wife Nancy. We're also very happy for all the alums who came back, and it's many generations of alums and current students, and it's really something. I mean, today we celebrate Professor Bauer's retirement after 47 years of dedication to Assumption and to its students. I mean, that's a remarkable and long, wonderful career. I mean, I've been here for a while, and he's been here almost twice as long. So it's really quite something. And during those years, he really has been quite a wonderful and remarkable colleague and teacher and thinker. And you know, think about this when it comes to practical affairs. Fred's always been an engaged and sensible and friendly colleague. He's always had the good of the college and of others in mind. I mean, he's always someone you can depend on to help out. And I remember how when I was serving on the Senate, and we were serving together, he never spoke against anybody. And he had suggestions for settling differences and for improving things. There was always just plain good sense, and you could always depend on him. But Professor Bauer did not make his reputation in the practical realm. Rather, he really is, as you know, I mean, this is what we're all here to celebrate, is someone who is always pushing and challenging others to be more rigorous and thoughtful and engaged, to really try to get him engaged. He wants to talk to each and every one of us and get us to really question all that stuff that we take for granted as just common sense. We all know it. No, you know, this is what. And he's reveled in this role as Assumption's gadfly, taking every opportunity to get students and faculty to pursue the truth more consistently, even when it takes them and takes us to unexpected conclusions which contradict our common sense. So Fred threw down these intellectual challenges, most especially in his classes. With his retirement, future generations of Assumption students will not have the experience of his questions and insight. And because my office is right next door to his, I've overheard countless conversations between Fred and his students. Some of these students were really energized by what they were getting, and they wanted more. Really. And some were in tears as they struggled to come to grips with this material, and how could they get their head around what he was trying to get them to see. And of course, it's not just students who have been the beneficiaries of Professor Bauer's persistent challenges. Over the years, Fred has regularly engaged us colleagues in private and in public debates. He's tried to awaken the whole community through many series of articles in the Provocateur. And anyone who's come to the physics lab was liable to be cornered and peppered by his unsettling questions. We've all been in Fred's sights at one time or another. We've all had our everyday common sense beliefs challenged by him. And so, to honor this colleague and friend, let me turn the podium over to him so that he can once again get us to look critically at the bases of our ordinary beliefs about God, about what we think we know, about what we believe to be real. So please welcome Assumption's own provocateur, Professor Fred Bauer.
Well, the word gadfly triggered something off in my mind. when I think of the gadfly, I think of Socrates, okay? And Socrates, you know his end, okay? But this is such a different end, you know, for a gadfly. At any rate, I want to start off by saying I've got a list of things that people I want to thank, okay? I first of all want to thank Dr. Corrigan, and other members of the philosophy department who arranged this, okay? It really is for me a great honor, and it's a farewell party. Anyway, I secondly want to say thanks to the Assumptionists, okay, who established this college in 1904, who hired me in 1979 to teach philosophy, and to the Assumptionists who, in the year that I came, opened the college to women students, one of whom became my wife and agreed to marry me in 1980, and I want to say thanks to her for absolutely everything. And I could go on and on. I'm going to stop here, okay, because I want to get to the role of the gadfly. If anybody wants to time me, you can, okay? I brought my clock here. We ordinarily glance at a clock and we can tell about what time it is and so forth. This is a backwards clock, and if you look at it, it's the right time, okay? If anybody wants to take this and tell me when my time is up, well, you can do it. Anyway, I brought that to make a point, okay? And the point is habit, okay? So when we were young, when we were little kids, and somebody said, okay, what time is it? You look at it and you say, like, good grief, what are you talking about? What time? I can tell you when the long hand goes, and that's after you learn how to count and learn to recognize which things were ones and ones were twos and so forth, okay? So eventually we acquire habits of thought that are certainly not universal to human beings, other human beings. And what I want to talk about tonight, or this afternoon, or this whenever it is, okay, different parts of the world, I want to talk about something that I think would improve education at this school and around the world, okay? And that is to learn about what I've called the divine deception. That's when I don't call it the divine sting, okay? I've written a book. If you want to know, like I'm going to try to condense, it's only 500 pages long. I'm going to try to, this is my latest book, I'm going to try to condense it, okay, into a short lecture. And basically what I want to talk about, when I talk about the divine deception or the divine sting, the idea is that our everyday way of thinking about the world and our experience is absolutely wrong. In other words, you probably are sitting out there, if there are any of you and you exist, okay? I know I can't, what I see right now when I open my eyes is not you, and when you open your eyes and look in this direction, what you're seeing is not me. What you have to learn is, what are you actually experiencing and seeing? And I'm going to call this is God's, it's incredible that God could pull this off, okay? I mean, only somebody who is infinitely great could pull it off and create and even dream up spirits, okay? Persons, spirits, who develop a learning, who learn and acquire a worldview, a belief system, or a philosophy. Take those three things as synonymous, okay? Everyone, I'm a great fan of William James, and one of his lectures in Pragmatism, he said, I know, ladies and gentlemen, that each and every one of you has a philosophy, okay? It's not in a technical sense, but you have a way of understanding the world. All of us, by the time we're 2 or 3 years old, arrive as long as we are, competent and so forth, we develop what I call a common sense worldview or philosophy. It's technically called at times by some authors as naive realism. Einstein came to recognize the fact that our common sense naive realism is 100. It's really wrong, and it's such a deception that Einstein called it a bourgeois illusion. The idea that the belief that you can sit there and feel a chair underneath your butt, okay? That you can open your eyes, that you have eyes to open, you can open your eyes and you can look out and you can see me. And if you want, you can close your eyes and stop seeing me. But the real question is, what is going on right now, okay? That's the real question. What's the truth? What I want to say this afternoon is I think we could improve our education here at Assumption. We could improve education around the world if people became more and more aware of what Descartes discovered, okay? Descartes is the most revolutionary thinker of modern times. And he's called the father of modern philosophy. He should be called the father of modern thought because people that learn something about Descartes eventually have to take a stand again, either for or against him. So what were the two major things that Descartes incorporated into his revolutionary works, the Discourse on Method and his Meditations on First Philosophy or Metaphysics? The most important one was, what do we know? And his second one was, if there is a physical world, what's it like? So, today we're all used to the second theory. There's probably nobody here who doesn't believe that material things like seats that we sit on, clothes that we wear, bodies that we inhabit, and so forth, okay, are made of atoms and molecules. Now, the idea of atoms, everything physical is made of atoms, that was an old theory. Democritus had introduced that theory many centuries before Descartes came along. But Descartes reinstated it, okay? And he wrote various books to explain that when we think about the physical world, we have to understand that everything that looks like a large-scale physical body is really billions or trillions of tiny little indestructible pieces of matter. In the 21st century, today, we take it for granted, okay, the idea of atomism. And all I can tell you is the more you learn about 21st century physics and atoms, the more you're going to understand how absolutely unbelievable is this universe that we inhabit. Okay? What I mean by that is, if you think of your body is more than 99 and 99/100% empty space. So if you take, for example, the hydrogen atom, there was one writer that said, if you think of the hydrogen atom as something you can enlarge the nucleus of, the single proton in the nucleus of a hydrogen atom, if you enlarge it to the size of a baseball and you look around for the electron, it would be about 8 city blocks away. The only solid matter in that entire area of a sphere, 16 city blocks in diameter, the only solid matter would be if you enlarge the nucleus the size of one baseball and one BB. All the rest of that incredibly huge 16 city block diameter balloon is empty space. If you look at your hand, there's two totally different ways of thinking of what's there, even if you could see it, okay? One is it's solid, it has a color, it's warm, if you don't have the DTs, it's stationary. If you're not 83, you can hold it stationary, and you can't see through it and so forth. The truth, according to 21st century physics, is there's no color there because atoms and molecules have no color. There's no color in the physical world. We've known that since the time of Galileo. Well, I wasn't around the time of Galileo, so I guess we didn't. But at any rate, okay, that idea has been around for a long time, that what we call sensations of color, sound, odor, taste, heat and cold, hard and soft, those are effects produced in us by an environment that we never directly experience. Anyway, that's Descartes' atomism. That isn't the part that I want to focus on this afternoon, okay? What I want to spend the rest of the time that I will be allotted or take, okay, is Descartes' theory of representationalism. The only things that you, if you exist, okay, ever experience is your own stream of consciousness, your own, the colors and sounds and odors and tastes that you're experiencing right now, the memories of your previous experiences, and finally, the beliefs and thoughts that you use to interpret your sensations. So we have raw sensations from the time that we are babies and infants, okay? But we don't have a clue to what the heck is going on. Eventually, we create, or there is created, or there develops in us a worldview, a kind of a map of the environment. For example, you have to know where the kitchen is, where the bathroom is when you're a little kid, okay? You have to know when you're allowed to go outside and play, what you have to do when you come back inside. We begin to form a view of our neighborhood when we're very, very young. And people can refer to different things. We learn names and designations for these different things, okay? We create ideas in our head, and we learn words and sounds and so forth that trigger them off. It never occurs to us when we're young that what we see is not the sun when it comes up in the east, that when it goes overhead, and then when it disappears behind the western horizon. It never occurs to us that what we see isn't the sun. It never occurs to us what Galileo proposed and what got him in trouble with the church. Namely, the earth is actually going around the sun. The sun is not doing the moving. Why did Galileo get in trouble for that? Well, if you remember the book of Joshua, it says in the book of Joshua, and I can never remember for sure whether it's the 18th chapter or the 10th verse or the 10th chapter and the 18th verse. I can never remember exactly, okay? But at any rate, it says God worked this miracle so that the Israelites could pursue and kill more of the Philistines, their enemies. God kept the sun up there, kept it from setting until they slew all the enemy. When Galileo came along in the 1500s and 1600s, and Galileo said, actually, the sun has not been doing any moving. It's the earth that is turning and going around the sun. And as the earth goes around the sun, it is twirling on its axis, okay? And that's what makes us think that the sun comes up, because the earth, when you're turned away from the sun, you can't see it. You can only see it when the earth turns enough that the sun becomes within sight again. At any rate, that was the first great trial for the Catholic Church, because Galileo was a Catholic, okay, and the Catholic Church said this is against the Bible. This is against the book of Joshua. And all I can tell you is atheists and people who think we should get rid of religion, we'd all be better off with less religion in the world, okay? I think that set the stage for the conflict between religion and science, that the two are incompatible. Eventually, the Catholic theologians came around, okay? I think that if there are any theology professors here, they are open to the idea that Galileo got it right. And at any rate, okay, that was the first great modern revolution. I would call it the first great modern scientific revolution. The discovery that right now we're spinning on the axis, we're moving, okay? We don't feel like we're moving. Anytime you watch the sun come up or go down, it seems like the sun does the moving. There's probably nobody in this room still believes that, as a matter of fact, the Earth isn't going around the sun. How many of you know the reasons why, the evidence that Galileo used to prove that the sun isn't doing the moving? How many of you know the experiments that he did to prove that the Earth is doing the moving?
Phases of Venus.
If you don't know the reasons, you're taking it on faith, okay? In other words, my presentation to you this evening is based on the idea that we're in an age of science when you need evidence for what you believe, especially if these are important beliefs. Why I think Descartes and his representationalism is the most important modern revolutionary theory, modern scientific discovery. I'll call it scientific discovery because there's overwhelming evidence, the evidence against the fact that right now, when you open your eyes, you think it's me that you see. It isn't. The evidence against the fact, the assumption, the belief, the conviction, the everyday, we know that we see other people, okay? We know, how can anybody say we don't? Well, it's not that easy, okay? I have to admit, to believe the truth in this area, to believe that Descartes was right, it's hard. It's hard because God created us to believe in everyday common sense naive realism for a purpose. We don't need to know, for example, that the Earth is going around the sun and not vice versa. We don't really need to know that, except when somebody says, well, look at the Bible. It's so clearly, a bunch of ancient thought. And we don't need representationalism very much during the day. And I'll explain the reason if I don't forget, okay? I have to keep, what time am I aiming for?
Quarter?
For what? Huh? Oh, another half hour?
End it and then we can have questions.
Oh, okay. Okay. Descartes' representationalism, you have no idea how many times I outlined this talk, how many pieces of paper I wasted, and so forth and so on. And even before I came in here, I said, what am I going to focus on? Because I have to have some central unifying idea. And if I don't forget, I will tell you what that unifying idea is. But first of all, what I want to do is to give you a bare bones outline of the theory that I call, that many people call sense datum theory, okay? So let me explain. There are four theories, okay, that have been proposed in modern times in answer to the question, what do human beings sense? The five senses. What do we see, hear, smell, taste, and feel, okay? There are four major theories or answers to that question. The first one is the common sense. We experience things outside of us, okay? We experience things in the world around us. We can watch the sun come up, and we can watch it change its color as it gets overhead, and then when it gets overhead, it's blindingly white, and you should not stare at it because it'll ruin your eyes, okay? So then, but by the time it goes down, it changes color again. You say to yourself, does the sun really change its color? And the answer is, of course not. Depending on where you are on this planet, you will see different things when you direct your eyes toward the sun. So we can explain that easily now. There's an atmosphere, there is a lot of air surrounding this planet Earth, and as the light goes through that atmosphere, some of the upper frequencies are scattered, and some of the slower frequencies can reach our eyes. And that is why we can look at the sun when it is at the horizon and so forth, because most of the light of the sun has been scattered away. When you look at the sky, however, you see the color blue. If you've ever taken an airplane ride, you know the sky it's not blue up there. You keep going up there and looking for the blue color that you see during the day. Guess what? It ain't there. So the question is, where is it? Answer number 2, what do we sense? We sense what's inside of our sense organs. In order to feel anything, if you put your hand on something cold, it's going to drain some of the energy from your skin, and what you feel is that change in the energy in your skin. The change in the temperature, we might call it. The sense of smell. We know, for example, that if we're downwind from a forest fire, you can smell the smoke. What you're smelling are particles that have had to travel and reach your nostrils. It's impossible to smell anything that's distant from your nose. Everybody knows that we have a sense of taste. Where is the taste and the flavor that we experience? It can only be in contact with our tongue. Okay? So somebody puts the steak in front of you on your platter, and you can smell it, and you begin to drool. Well, you can't actually taste it. You say, wow, I can already taste it, but that's an illusion. You're anticipating what it's going to taste like. And how many people have thought they were going to bite into and experience a wonderful taste, and there was something wrong with the meat, they sent it back to the cook. Anyway, my point is I'm going through each one of the senses. The sense of hearing. It does seem to you that what you're hearing is the sound of my voice out where I am. All you have to do, however, is be curious enough during an electrical storm to begin counting the time between the moment you see the lightning and you hear the thunder. And that's why, it's easy to figure out. If you count 5 seconds, you're about a mile away from where the lightning strikes, which means you're safe. If there isn't much time or no time delay between the lightning and the thunder and so forth, your experience of the two, you better don't stand under a tree and count your blessings that it isn't going to hit you, the lightning, okay? Because it's very close to you. So when you put these everyday facts together, the greatest blessing that we have is a mind. And your mind is going to tell you that the sounds you hear are never further from you than your ears. It sure as hell seems like I can see you, though, and you're not in my eyes, and you can see me, and I'm not in your eyes. I'm not in your eyes, okay? But in fact, there is light from those fluorescent lamps, and it is flooding this room, and if you could see light, you wouldn't be able to see me. It'd be trying to look through a fog. Nobody has ever seen light. Now, I know that sounds Many of the psychology textbooks and physics textbooks will explain that it's light that we see. It isn't. Light is totally invisible. Okay? And I bought this little laser pointer a long time ago. So if you look at the ceiling, you can see a red dot there, okay? But you can't see any light going from my hand to the ceiling. Light, nobody has ever seen light. What we see is color. Colors, okay? So you have to go back to Aristotle. Aristotle said, and Aristotle was so brilliant, okay? And in his psychology, he said, okay, let's analyze the way we know things. And he said, we have 5 senses, and each one of the senses has its own specialty. So that when you're talking about hearing, that special object of hearing is sounds. You can't hear color. You can't hear odor. Each one of the senses, the 5 senses, has its own special object, okay? So it is odor for smell, flavor for taste, heat and cold and hard and soft for sense of touch, sound for hearing, and color for sight. That's over 2,000 years ago. Aristotle, you can already find it in Aristotle's works. And things haven't changed since Aristotle finally, thought things through and came to that conclusion that each one of the senses has its own specialty. Let me see. The hardest one really to deal with, I don't know. I think everybody has had the experience of a train going by, and you can hear the train coming, and as the train comes, the sound of the whistle of the train rises, the tone of it, and as it drives away, as the train drives away or moves away and so forth, the sound goes down, the pitch. It comes up, it rises as the source of sound is coming toward you, and it becomes lower as the source moves away. The hardest one of all, though, is the sense of sight. For me to open my eyes and say I know what I see is just a total visual field of colors. It's like being at a movie, okay? And that's what I would say is probably the best analogy. We're lucky in the 21st century. All of us have the experience of going to the movies. Especially in the old days, okay, when they would turn down the lights and the theater becomes dark. I mean, I can remember when they showed movies in this room and the lights go down and so forth, and the projection camera comes on and the screen begins to have colors, okay? You would have scenes. While you're watching the movie, the interesting psychological thing that happens is you become so engrossed in what is not there because your imagination creates characters, your imagination creates drama, creates actions and so forth. And movies can make us cry. Movies can make us scared. Movies can make us so overjoyed that we anyway, you understand what I'm trying to put into words, even though words don't exist. The only things coming out of my mouth are really different sounds, okay? And different pitches. I mean, that is one of the easiest things of all. That language as such doesn't exist, okay? And a lot of people said the trouble with my way of looking at things is that you have to come to the realization that most of the things you believe in don't literally exist. If you want to know as much as God, you have to know the complete total answer to 3 questions. Question number 1 is, what exists? And most of the things that all of us grew up believing exist don't. Secondly, we have to know what things that exist do. What do they do? And thirdly, this is the toughest one. Why do they do it? Why do they do it? At any rate, okay, what I want to do next is just give you some of the evidence that what you're seeing right now is not me. And I have a book at home. I was trying to look for it today. It's an introduction to philosophy. And whoever the author was said, the difference between science and philosophy is in science they do experiments. They do experiments, okay? But in philosophy, like, you can believe whatever the heck you want. The philosophers, they just sit around and think. But you do experiments. So what I've decided is I'm going to invite you to do some experiments to introduce what I call the divine sting or the divine deceptions, okay? And these are really easy. Anybody that has two eyes, okay, and that can cross their eyes and focus on different things can do the experiments that I'm going to describe. These are experiments that I've used in class year after year, and they should work for just about everybody who has normal vision. So the first thing I'm going to ask you is, pretend that there is a line from your nose to my nose, from your nose to my face. And then, on that line, hold your finger up. So I'm going to ask everybody to do this experiment, okay? Hold your finger up about a foot from your nose on that line that runs, that invisible line that runs from your nose to my nose, okay? Now, if you do that and you stare at me, how many fingers do you see? How many of you think you can create two fingers out of one? But here is how you can go back to just one finger, okay? Stare at your finger and then tell me how many of me are up here on the stage. So I would invite you, you have no idea, okay? I'm inviting you to learn this experiment, okay? You have no idea how many times I do this in a week, okay? To convince myself that I'm not wrong about all this. Because there's no doubt about it. I mean, sheer logic. You know you can't make two of me out of one just by changing what you're focusing on. And you can't create two, you've only, well, that's if you have a body. The fact is, the truth is, let me put it this way. If you learn, Descartes is called the father of modern philosophy because he laid down the challenge, okay? I think it's the fourth part of his Discourse on Method, Descartes said, if you haven't been convinced so far of the existence of God and your soul, then believe me, you don't have any good reason to believe in anything else. And after Descartes finished laying down throwing down the gauntlet and so forth, later on came other thinkers, one of whom was George Berkeley. Now, when I was studying philosophy, of course, we were taught Descartes screwed everybody up in modern thought, okay? So, and when we heard that Descartes said, what you directly experience isn't your own body, you have to believe in God and, no, it's just my cane. You have to believe in God and an immaterial soul in order to understand the truth about these things. That sounded really crazy. But Berkeley, he took what Descartes laid down, came to the conclusion that what each one of us experiences is in our own stream of consciousness. In other words, let me put it this way. All the thoughts that you have right now. I would imagine that most of you, not too many, I don't see anybody that looks like they're sleeping, but at any rate, okay, I would assume that you are thinking. How do you know there are any thoughts going through your mind? There's only one way, and that is by intuition. You know what you're thinking. Nobody else can read your thoughts directly. Your thoughts are totally private to you. There can be signs, as there are thoughts going through my mind, and I am making noises, okay, so that you can think thoughts similar to mine. Only because you have habits of association, what we refer to as knowledge of the English language. If I were up here speaking German, how many of you would be able to understand my lecture? If I were speaking Japanese, how many of you could understand my lecture, okay? So what is the difference between Chinese, German, English? They're different sounds. They're just different sounds that we learn to associate with. If you're bilingual, you're lucky because you have two sets of sounds that you associate with the same ideas. People that speak French and English don't go from one view of the world to another view when they switch from English to French. They use the same, they use the same belief system to interpret different sounds, okay? So life is really, let me put it this like, who cares about all this shit? Because that's the bottom question. Like, who cares, okay? Philosophers can't change anything. I mean, philosophers, what do? They sit in their ivory towers and they write books and so forth. Well, that really isn't true, okay? Because it is the worldviews of people who, for example, I mean, there are a lot of people today like that. Who cares about all this? Who cares about it is because each one of us behaves and lives our lives on the basis of what we believe. That's why it's so important for us to learn the truth. The truth, okay? And what I'm saying is Descartes should be much better known, and Descartes' representationalism should be much better known than it is. And it's not, at times, okay, I can present all the arguments, and I've got a few more displays, okay, to show you, to convince you. But I always tell my students, you don't have to believe me, but you do have to try to understand me, okay? And in order to understand me, you're going to have to learn to think a radically different way than you're used to. Radically different. Because, I mean, but this is a great time to be alive. 21st century. Most of us have heard of virtual reality. Time magazine had an article on virtual reality. And the easiest demonstration of it is with pairs of goggles that they can hook up to computers and so forth. You put on the goggles, and it is going to create two different images, one in each eye. And it's I would imagine that before I came, I had put a whole bunch of things together in a bag, and I don't know where in heavens that bag is right now. But one of them was a Viewmaster, okay? On my, I think, 29th or 30th birthday, I asked my parents if they would buy one of those Viewmasters. You look through them, okay, as a birthday present. Because you look through them, there are clearly two lenses. There are clearly two pieces of film, and yet they blend into one. Okay? I'm going to do one more experiment, ask you to do one more experiment, okay, by looking at your fingers and so forth. If you are good at winking, okay, this is going to be one, well, actually, you don't have to learn to wink, okay? Like, I've learned to wink both eyes, and I do that a lot, okay? I practice it because if I stare at my finger, I see two of things in a distance. If I close one eye, one half disappears. If I close the other eye, the other half disappears. Or if I'm looking at something distant, I close one eye, one finger disappears. I close the other eye, the other finger disappears, okay? That is evidence that what you see cannot be further from you than your eyes, because you have two eyes, and the real question is, why do you ever see just one thing with two different lenses and two different images? Anyway, you can think about that, and once again, I mean, if you want, it's only 500 pages long, okay, and thank heavens for iUniverse, which will publish. If you pay them enough, they'll publish anything. and many of the things that they published for me probably wouldn't be published. Other publishing companies probably wouldn't publish them. If I ask you, what do you see? What would you say? What is this? Pardon me? Pardon? If I ask you, what kind of animal is this? Would you know the answer? Obviously, it's not an animal. Obviously, it's just a picture, okay, an image, and that's what you have to get used to. Am I seeing images of things that are out in the physical world, or am I seeing the physical things themselves through the images? That's the big question, because you do have images in your eye. Some of you are bifocals, wearing bifocals. You're nearsighted like I am, okay? There is an advantage to being nearsighted. Take off your bifocals and everything blurs. Put them back on and things sharpen up. How many of you felt like you got blurry and you got sharp, okay? You didn't change. What changed were the images in my eyes. So the big question is, do we see distant things, or do we only see the things in our eyes? We only feel the heat and cold that makes contact with our skin. We only taste the food that's in contact with our tongue. We only smell the particles that reach our nose. We only hear the sound waves that reach our ears. We only see, if we saw light, the only light we could see would be the light that reaches the retinas in our eyes. And as long as we have two eyes with two lenses, there are two different images. And that's why when you do the experiment, all I can tell you is that I do it frequently because it's so hard to believe the truth. It is so hard to believe. On the other hand, okay, so that's one thing. Okay, here's another. This is known as, oh, phooey. That is not a good background. Okay, the side there is much better, or if I even brought the, you know what? Why didn't I do that?
Okay, great.
Thank you. That's great. Okay, so what I'm going to ask you to do is, I have this thing that I cut out of a magazine a long time ago, and in the center is a little black dot. Stare at the black dot. I'm going to hold it here for about 15 seconds. Stare at the very center of that heart, and then when I say go, start staring over at the whiteboard there. So just stare at the middle of that. That's long enough. Now stare at the whiteboard. What do you see when you stare at the whiteboard? Okay. How many of you saw a heart? How many of you saw yellow color? You saw yellow color when you looked there? How many of you saw green in the center? Okay. You see the opposite colors, okay? What's the word they use? The complementary colors and so forth and so on, okay? So this will create a really vivid image of a heart that is violet and reddish in the center. Okay, that's one of the, that is the after image experiment, okay? Anyway, that gives you an idea. I could go through, yeah, I left most of my other demonstrations at home. But you get the general idea is either you are experiencing things that are distant from you, or only the things that are in your nose, your eyes, your skin, your tongue, and your ears. Or, as the psychology textbook that is used at this school to introduce students to psychology, I have taken several quotations and written them on a sheet of paper, okay? And David Myers is the author of the psychology textbook that is used by the psychology department to introduce students to psychology. And the interesting thing about David Myers is he says, when you start to study sensation, you have to understand something about color. Because what we see is color, what we hear is sound, and so forth. At one point, he says, it's very interesting when we talk about the color of a tomato. The tomato, we say, is red. But we know that as a matter of fact, the red color of the tomato is in the theater of our brain. The colors you're seeing right now, are in your brain. So there are four theories. Let me wrap this up by saying there are four different theories that you have to learn. Where and what are the things that we sense? What and where are the things that we sense? Answer number one, most of the things we sense are in the outside world, the world around us, in our environment. So we see people, we hear birds singing, we smell the smoke from a distance and so forth, we smell the scent of the flowers, etc. We sense things in the world outside of ourselves. The second theory is, no, this is the inside the organ, intraorganic object theory. What we feel is the change of temperature in our skin. What we smell are the particles in contact with our nasal receptors. What we taste are the impressions made on our tongue, the taste buds. What we hear are sound waves that reach our ears, and what we see is the color. Well, it's really the light that reaches our eyes and creates the images in our eyes. That's the second theory. A lot of people, that's what I was actually taught when I studied philosophy. Okay, the textbook that we used said what we directly sense is inside our sense organs. The third theory is the one that you find in the psychology textbook, which is the worst possible answer. Everything you experience is in your brain. The reason why, I mean, it's so absurd. The reason why most people who consider themselves scientific stick with the third theory, okay? If they have realized what Einstein said, naive realism, the idea that we directly experience things is a bourgeois illusion. The reason is because once you believe that what you experience is in your mind, then it raises the big question, what is a human being? Are we simply highly evolved animals? Or are we immortal beings? So today, I would say today in 2016, more and more people are convinced that I asked this question on Google a while back, like, is the number of people becoming atheists and agnostics, is it increasing? And the answer is yes. The impact of modern science on people's minds, I mean, we have to, I'm not against science. There's no such thing. There are only people who have their own philosophy, worldview, or belief system. And if you believe that there's a huge difference between philosophy and science, that's part of your philosophy. That's part of your worldview. Okay? Those are abstractions. What really exists are individual people. Every single one of us in this room has our own belief system, worldview, or philosophy. So all the things that I am saying, I'm making all these noises and hoping that thoughts are coming to you. You have to make up your mind. Do you sense things that are distant from you? Do you sense things in your senses? Do you experience things in your brain? The answer clearly is no, because your brain is the darkest place in town. It floats in a fluid, okay, so that vibrations can't reach it. The idea that the things you smell are in your brain, I mean, how more absurd can you be, okay? There's only one remaining answer, and that is the one that Descartes, and then after him, Locke and Berkeley and Hume and Immanuel Kant, and especially my favorite thinker of all time, William James, would say, well, each one of us is experiencing is our own private stream of consciousness. It doesn't seem private. It doesn't seem like it's private. I mean, it's a very spacious world. Immanuel Kant was the person who really came to put things in a beautiful way when he said we have to distinguish between the phenomenon and the noumenon, the phenomenal world and the noumenal world. The noumenal world, that's what things really are in themselves. But what we experience is things as they appear to us. And that's all in our mind. It's all relies on our consciousness. So Immanuel Kant anyway. Is that it? I mean,
If you want to keep going, you still have to get to what we haven't gotten to God's deception.
Okay,
yet.
so what do you see here? Everybody can tell I have an apple in my hand, correct? No, it's a piece of wax, okay? It has the shape of an apple. It has, well, it's not a great color and so forth, but at any rate, okay, it's a piece of wax. What you sense is what you sense. How you interpret your sensations, that's what you believe. So, when you start to ask practical question, is there such a thing as money? The economics teachers at this school should be the most outspoken. Of course, there is no such thing as money. Whatever it seems like, it ain't. Okay, it looks like, well, it looks like a piece of paper. Okay, if you get close to, I mean, I've held up, things like a $10 bill and said, like, it's just a piece of paper. And students have said, okay, can I have it? And of course, I don't give it to them. Why? Because I know that the people at the grocery store, they believe this is really valuable stuff. So we are playing on each other's worldviews. In fact, there's a thinker, a philosopher called John Searle, and he wrote a book that a copy of which I have at home and couldn't find at the last minute when I wanted to bring it. And he said there are four things that exist. This is on page 1 of his book. Let's see. No, forget it. Okay, I'm trying to remember something else. He says there are four things that exist only because we believe they exist: government, money, property, and marriage. Marriage. Have you ever seen a marriage? We're not talking about an activity. We're not talking about people getting married. When you stop and say, what is a marriage? Like, look around the world, look around the room and ask yourself, can you spot the people that are married? Just by looking. They don't have a different look, okay? They look just like people before and after the ceremony. What is marriage? That's actually, I've thought of that as the topic for my term paper in one of my courses this semester, okay? What is marriage? Anyway, so John Searle says it exists only because we believe it exists. Property. Who belongs to whom do these things belong? Okay? Well, all of you, respect. If I said to you, I have a right to these, okay? I have earned these. These are all mine, okay? What does it mean to say they're mine? If somebody else stole them, do they change at all? Absolutely not. You say, but they have a special relation to me of ownership. Who has ever seen a relation called ownership? Most of the things we grow up believing in, learning to believe in, exist in our mind. Exist in our mind. That is why my favorite topic when I teach is called logical fictions or theoretical constructions. There's all kinds of ways that educated people, I shouldn't say that, all kinds of things that people who are really think it's an important idea, that we distinguish between the things we believe and the things that really and truly exist. Most of the things that we believe in exist only in our mind. So John Searle, my view is, John Searle was, he was very skimpy when he said there's 4 things that exist. The difference between himself, John Searle, mine, I don't think they exist at all. We have beliefs in them. So, in one sense, your reality, your personal reality, is what you make it, is what you choose to believe in. And finally, okay, the last thing, why is it important? I would say the reason is important because of the reasons Descartes gave. You can be more sure of God and your immortal soul than you can be of anything else. And, I mean, 500 pages, I can't really summarize the whole thing, okay, any more briefly than that. But if your goal is to know the truth, and somebody raises a doubt about something you believe, you have a moral obligation to think about it and try to learn the truth. Okay, that's. Hey, now I get to sit down. Now I can sit down. Now I can sit down. Thank you all, and thanks for coming. I had no idea that this many people would be interested, okay? Thank you for listening so quietly.
There is a reception immediately following down in the Maison, in the auditorium of the Maison. So I hope you're all able to join us, and you all get your chance to ask questions that some of you have been thinking about for some years. So you can do it. Thank you again. Thank you very much for the Provost and Ms. Payne for all.